So now I'm going to show you how to do Gaussian blur. Alright, first thing again, we'll create a new composition, and I'll call this one Gaussian Blur. And let's change the running time to just be 10 seconds so it's not too long. And what I need to do is, again, let's have something to blur out. Why don't we, this time I'm going to import some footage. I'll take this butterfly for now. And it has an alpha channel on it. I'm going to leave it alone and have it say straight unmatted. Say OK. And it doesn't just have to be text when you apply the Gaussian blur. It could be anything. So I'm going to first put it on this butterfly. Okay, and the next thing I want to do is I want to go into my effects. So if I click on the window that says effects, and if you know what you're trying to find, you could just type in the first few letters and it will automatically search it like it does in anything like Google. If you're trying to find it, you just select the layer. There's another effect window up here, and if you go down to blur and sharpen, you'd find Gaussian blur down here as well. But I've got it right here, and I'm just going to take this layer and drop it onto, I'm going to take this effect, and notice when I drop it onto the object, I get that little plus sign. Notice that the same thing happens if I drop it onto the object in the composition window. This gets a little bit tricky when you have a lot of different things in the window to sometimes lay it right on top of the object you want to work with. So it's probably a better habit to just get into dropping your effects onto the layers. Okay, and when you first drop it in there, nothing happens, but I want you to notice what's going on up here, because now we have this effect window has opened up. And if you're ever trying to find your effect window, you can also open it up from over here under the window. Okay, so if you're once you open your effect window, it's hard to find your project window, but then you have these little arrows here which allow you to kind of swap between whatever windows are open here. But I want to have the effect control window, and so now you'll notice that the blurriness has a stopwatch as well. And so what I'm going to do is and notice that it's at 0 blurriness. So I'm going to click on the stopwatch. I'll move it in time. And I'm going to put my cursor over the numbers over here to increase the blurriness. So if you imagine, you can actually, also if you twirl this down, you can change the blurriness this way as well. Now you can imagine, like, if I had another butterfly or another object. Let's go into our project window and take another instance of the butterfly. You can see, like, maybe you want to create like a rack focus or something, so you can have an object in the background. Let's go back to this other butterfly, go to the effect control, and I can animate things going in and out of focus. So why is that good? Well, there's a lot of ways that you can kind of emphasize your objects by putting little things out of focus. For example, let me get rid of this top layer butterfly for a minute. And if I took a piece of text, and let's just type a thing for now. Let's make it a little bit smaller. I'll just type something clever like butterfly. So I want you to notice with the background out of focus, it's very easy to read. But if I took this and did it here, what this does is it allows the text in front of it to kind of pop out. Okay, so I can also apply blur to my text and do the same exact thing where I can maybe have the text kind of fade in or dissolve in, actually blur in. And so let's say I want it to blur in over here. So what I'm going to do in this situation is I'm going to twirl down our butterfly text, and I'm going to animate the opacity in this situation. So I turned on the opacity stopwatch, made a keyframe over here, and I'm going to make this 0, so the butterfly is invisible. Okay, and so now when I move the playhead a little further in time with the stopwatch turned on, I can then fade it in. And now I'm going to go back to the beginning of this fade in. And a quick way to do that is if you come over here, you'll see like these little arrows next to this is telling me that this playhead is sitting right on a keyframe. But I want to go to the first keyframe, and instead of like trying to drag it around and hoping that I'm sitting right on top of it, all you have to do is hit this little arrow, and this arrow will click to the next keyframe. Okay? So now I want to apply some blur to my text. So as it's fading in, I'm going to turn on the blurriness here. And as this is fading in, maybe at the very beginning of this thing, it was really, really blurry. So, and you can't see it because the opacity is all the way down at 0%. So if I were to fade it in, you can see like it's out of focus. So at this point, I want it to come into focus. So I'm going to twirl that down and bring this down to 100 or 0. So now what's happening is at the same time it's fading in and the blur is diminishing. Okay, so maybe I'll change the running time. And over here, can you see these little black dots? Okay, these represent, if you follow the line over to the left, you'll see the effects. So for some reason, in After Effects, you might have multiple effects applied to a layer. So what it does is it kind of shows you where there are keyframes. If you actually want to mess with those keyframes, you have to kind of keep twirling down. But what that is actually doing is it's just showing you the same keyframes that you turned on in the effect control window. Okay? That might be a little confusing at times, but you'll figure it out. All right, so now what happens is this is what it's looking like. I'm hitting the letter B to begin my work area and the letter N to end my work area. And now let's do a pre-render. Pretty good. And so when I get to this part, maybe what I want to do is have it, I want the butterfly to now dissolve out. Okay, so let's go down to our effects and see what we're doing there. I'm going to now create a keyframe, go down to the Gaussian Blur over here, and create a keyframe by clicking on the blurriness here. And I want to fade out that butterfly or blur it out. And then I'm going to fade it out. So now I'm going to go to my transform, turn on the opacity, move it in time, and dissolve it out. All right, so let's do a pre-render and see what that's looking like. Okay, do you see when we get to this point how the word butterfly really pops out because the background is soft? It's just another way to think about this in case you have some design issues. You want to kind of make things more legible or stand out a little bit.